Did you know? The origins of Earthworm Jim come not from a game developer, but from a toy company. After their success with a Ninja Turtles deal, Playmates Toys wanted to create their own franchise to bank on. Unlike the Turtles, who saw success in other fields prior to video games, Playmates wanted to start with games right off the bat, taking a page from titles like Sonic the Hedgehog. They got together with programmer David Perry, who had previously worked for Virgin Interactive, and lent Perry the money to fund Shiny Entertainment. Perry assembled a team made up of ex-Virgin members who wanted to start with a license and later delve into original content. However, they didn't like any of the options Playmates offered them, having narrowly avoided a Beavis and Butthead game. The team decided to make an original IP and played around with a character called Snot, a blob of goo who could shapeshift. They did a few pencil test animations and seemed to be going ahead with that idea. At that time, the team had mentioned Doug TenNapel for the position of animator. TenNapel worked with Virgin before going to Shiny and is where he and Perry first met. The team liked Doug's work, but he had to prove he was Shiny material and was asked to make an alien creature with a walk cycle as part of his test. He presented a sketch of his Earthworm character, and upon seeing it, Perry and the team found their calling. They bought the rights to the character and TenNapel got the job. Several other characters from his demo found their way into what would become Earthworm Jim, and Shiny Snot Creature was repurposed as Jim's own pet. The design of Jim is in part due to hardware limitations. Many of TenNapel's drawings at the time had to be simple so characters were conveyed easily, and it offered more room for exaggeration. His human frame took inspiration from Warner Brothers characters like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and animating such anatomy posed a greater personal challenge. TenNapel did everything from brainstorming level ideas to voicing Jim himself, and the whole team took an active role pitching concepts for Jim's world. One feature that separated Jim from the competition was the game's brand of humor. The team held gag sessions, seeing what made them laugh and what they thought made fun gameplay. Anything that could be done was put in, and it was all made up as they went along. TenNapel had said in an interview with Killscreen that the key to Earthworm Jim was that we were cut loose to make our own game for the first time. We had all done multiple licensed games for everyone from Disney to 7-Up, so we were confined to a lot of content limitations. So we got to finally make our own thing, and I think Jim reflected the energy of the 8 Shiny guys at that period in our life. We listened to Monty Python CDs, loved They Might Be Giants, Beastie Boys, and Weird Al. So I think a lot of influences were trickling into our tastes at the time. Given their creative freedom, Jim was also very much a satire of video game cliches. Princess What's-Her-Name was a mockery of how damsels in distress were overused in gaming. We also reached out to TenNapel for further details, and he explained that Jim's entire persona is a take on everything superheroes and testosterone. During his time at Virgin, Perry worked on titles like Cool Spot and Disney's Aladdin for the Genesis. Jim runs on the same engine as those games and followed the same animation process Aladdin did. The sprites were made by first drawing them on paper, scanning them onto the computer, then passing them through a compression tool in a technique they called Animotion. Perry said the game's animation was technically more than a Genesis could store, but compression was the key to get it all in. Mike Dietz, who worked with Disney on the Aladdin game, served as Jim's animation director and was invaluable with timing and working around the limitations of cartridges. This posed more of an issue when the team ported Jim to the Super Nintendo. Though the Snes had a larger color palette, it was more limiting in how many sprites could be on screen at a time, as well as how big they could get. One frame of character animation had several sprites to it, and some limitations also meant the sprites couldn't be stretched out as much. After working on the Genesis, they'd go back to the Snes version to shrink frames down or remove them completely, leaving the Genesis game with more fluid animation. Another area where Sega won out was with the exclusive level Intestinal Distress. At the last minute, Sega asked Shiny for an extra level to be put in their version in exchange for reduced cartridge costs. Art director Nick Brody took one of his earlier concepts and mapped out the level overnight. It was coded, tested, and out the door the next day, the very day it was to be printed on consoles. Brody also had a level named after him called Big Brody, exclusive to the Special Edition port. This port also has a cheat code that swaps out Jim's head for Donkey Kong's with an arrow through it, allegedly taking a shot at Donkey Kong Country for upstaging Jim's initial release. While it's unknown if this was a direct reply, DKC2 featured Jim's ray gun by a trash can labeled No Hopers, along with Sonic's shoes. Since the release of Earthworm Jim 2, the franchise has tried making several comebacks, usually to little or no result. In 2003, a title was in the works for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, but was shelved before the production stage. It reportedly had a structure akin to games like Klonoa, and level concepts ranged from Jim boat riding through heck in a musical sequence to a world made of cheese with a boss called Gorgonzola. During E3 2006, an Earthworm Jim game was announced for the PSP. Though the IP's handheld rights were owned by Atari, the project was being led by Perry and had many original Shiny members on board, including TheCartoonGamer. Many review sites had played early builds of the game, but financial issues with Jim's publisher Interplay led to its cancellation in mid-2007. Shortly after, Interplay announced Earthworm Jim 4 in April 2008 and said TheCartoonGamer was on board as a creative consultant. It was also said to coincide with a new Earthworm Jim animated series and a feature-length film, though nothing came out of this either. TheCartoonGamer said Interplay were interested in doing a game and doing it right, but it mainly boiled down to money troubles once again. In 2010, an HD remake of Earthworm Jim was put out by Gameloft. The game also featured the extended version of New Junk City found in the special edition, but doesn't have the big broody level from that same port, and is missing a level from the Genesis version. Although this version was well received, it had some shady practices behind it. An icon of Jim's head was taken from fan art by a DeviantArt user, and the artist found out upon buying the game on day one. In 2016, Interplay put its IPs up for sale, with one of them being Earthworm Jim. When asked about the series' future, Dave Perry still believes there'll be a new game, though it's more a matter of when that would happen, not if, and he would need the original team behind it. He also laments selling Jim's rights to Interplay in the first place, saying that it was a really dumb move on his part. And if you want more facts, check out our video on how Rayman was originally a 10-year-old boy named Jimmy. And if you'd like to see something from me, why not hear me talk about the days of watching Pokemon on Kids WB and YTV? A trip down memory lane for Americans and Canadians alike, so yeah, check it out, why don't ya? You won't be disappointed. Alright, I'm out of here. Later.